Is the soul real? I mean, it's a huge question, right? For centuries, that was a job for philosophers and theologians. But what happens when the people who are literally inside our heads, neurosurgeons, start seeing things that just don't add up? Things that challenge the standard scientific story? Well, that's what we're going to dive into. We're going to look at some really surprising evidence that suggests the connection between our brain and our mind is a lot weirder and a lot more mysterious than most of us think.
So the perspective we're digging into today isn't from a philosopher. It's from a neurosurgeon. And not just any neurosurgeon. We're talking about a guy who has done over 7,000 brain operations. He started his career as a total materialist, completely convinced that our mind is just what the brain does. But what he saw day in and day out in the operating room started to poke some serious holes in that belief.
Okay, so what is this materialism he believed in? Basically, it's the standard view in science. It says that everything about you, your thoughts, your consciousness, your sense of self, is produced only by the physical stuff in your skull, your brain. It's all just chemical reactions and electrical signals. Simple, right? The brain makes the mind. And that's the exact idea we're going to challenge.
So where did this surgeon's doubt start? Well, it wasn't in some dusty library or a philosophy class. Nope. It started right there, in the operating room. The first big cracks in that materialist worldview came from his own patients, people whose conditions just shouldn't have been possible, according to the textbooks.
And this brings us to our first mind-bending set of evidence. I'm talking about the case files of people whose brains were so incomplete, so damaged, that by all scientific logic, they shouldn't have had a functioning mind at all. But, as you're about to see, reality had other plans.
Okay, look at this. This really gets to the heart of the puzzle. On the left, you see a pretty normal-looking brain. All the parts are there. But on the right, whoa, 2/3 of that brain is just gone. It's filled with fluid. Now, if materialism is correct, the person with the brain on the right should be, profoundly disabled, maybe not even conscious, right?
So let me ask you a question. Could a person with that brain on the right, the one that's mostly empty space, not only function, but actually get on the honor roll in high school? I mean, mainstream science would say, no way, absolutely impossible. But the facts tell a very different story. Okay, get this. These are real people. That young woman with the brain we just saw, yep, honor roll student. Then there's Maggie, who's missing her entire cerebellum. She has a master's degree. A master's! Joshua, born with 2/3 of his brain missing, is graduating high school and he plays sports. And maybe the most shocking of all, a boy named Nicholas, who is missing both of his brain's hemispheres, is completely conscious and emotionally normal. I mean, you just have to ask, how is any of this possible if the brain is the only thing creating the mind?
So it's not just these wild patient stories. Scientists have also tried to pinpoint the self, our reason, our intellect, somewhere in the physical brain using controlled experiments. And guess what? The results are just as strange.
Let's talk about a neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield. He noticed something really interesting during his brain surgeries for epilepsy. He saw that a seizure could make a patient's arm twitch, or make them smell something that wasn't there, or even trigger a really specific memory. But he realized no one ever had a seizure that made them, involuntarily do advanced math or debate philosophy. So why not? Why couldn't you trigger abstract thought like you could trigger a movement or a memory?
So Penfield went looking for it. He would have his patients awake during surgery, and he would use a little electrode to stimulate different parts of their brain. He could make an arm move, he could trigger a visual flash, he could evoke an emotion. He poked everywhere. But he could never, ever find a spot that housed the intellect, the center for reason. His conclusion was pretty radical. Maybe that part of us just isn't located in the brain tissue at all.
And the plot thickens when we look at split brain patients. These are people who, for medical reasons, have had the connection between their left and right brain hemispheres cut. So check out this wild experiment. Scientists show the left side of the brain a picture of a baseball, and they show the right side of the brain a picture of a broken window. Remember, the two halves can't talk to each other, but when they ask the patient what they saw, they instantly put it together. The baseball broke the window.
But wait a second. Just think about that. How? No single piece of their physical brain saw the whole picture. The left brain only saw a baseball. The right brain only saw a window. So what or who put those two clues together to create a story? It really seems to suggest there's a single unified me that's looking at the data from both halves of the brain, even when they can't communicate with each other.
All right, let's talk about free will. This one's a doozy. There were these famous experiments by a guy named Benjamin Libet, And he found that your brain fires up a signal to act before you're even aware you've decided to do it. And for a long time, people said, see, no free will. Your brain decides for you. But, and this is a huge but, Libet also discovered that when you decide not to do it, when you veto that urge, there's no new brain signal. That decision to say no, what he called free won't, seems to come from somewhere else. It's like your brain might suggest an idea, but something else gets to give the final yes or no.
Okay, now we're getting to what might be the most powerful evidence of all. And it comes from people who are right on the brink of life and death. Patients in comas, people who we usually assume have no conscious awareness left.
40%. Just let that sink in. 40% of patients who are diagnosed as being in a persistent vegetative state, which is basically considered a lost cause, are actually showing clear signs of being conscious when we test them in new ways.
A researcher named Adrian Owen did this incredible work where he put these patients into an fMRI machine and just talked to them. And he found that even with catastrophic brain damage, they could understand his questions. They could solve math problems in their head. They could think about their family history. There was a living, breathing mind trapped inside a body that everyone had written off.
And if that's not enough, there's the unbelievable story of Pam Reynolds. She had to have this crazy risky surgery where they cooled her body down, stopped her heart, and drained all the blood from her brain. She was, for all intents and purposes, clinically dead. No brain activity at all. But when they brought her back, she could describe exactly what happened. She knew about the specific surgical tools they used. She repeated conversations the doctors were having. She even knew what song was playing on the radio, all while her brain was completely offline.
So, okay, let's put all the pieces together. You've got minds that work without a full brain. You've got an intellect that surgeons can't seem to find anywhere in the brain tissue. You've got this unified self that brings together a split brain, and you've got consciousness when the brain isn't even working. All of these clues, they all point in the same direction, away from materialism. It kind of feels like we need a new theory, doesn't it?
And that's exactly what this neurosurgeon proposes. He suggests a totally different model. He argues, look, maybe the brain is the organ for all the physical stuff, movement, your senses, memories, emotions. But the other stuff, the abstract stuff, like your intellect, your reason, your free will, maybe that comes from something else entirely, an immaterial part of you. You could call it the soul.
And if you accept that idea, it leads to a really profound conclusion about existence itself. Think about it. Physical things, a chair, a tree, your body, are all made of parts. And anything made of parts can be broken apart, right? It can disintegrate. But what about something that's not physical, like the idea of the number 8? You can't cut the number 8 in half. You can't burn it. The concept itself has no parts. The argument here is that if the soul is immaterial, then just like a number, it can't be broken down. It can't disintegrate.
So that leaves us with one final huge question. For so long, we've thought of the brain as a factory that manufactures consciousness. But if all this evidence is pointing us in a new direction, if the brain isn't creating our mind, our intellect, our will, then what is it doing? Maybe it's not a factory at all. Maybe it's more like a radio receiver, an antenna tuning into a consciousness that's bigger than just the physical matter in our heads. And if that's true, well, that changes just about everything we thought we knew.